the 3 snake leaves.
There was once on a time a poor man who could no longer support his only son. Then said the son,
"Dear father, things go so badly with us that I am a burden to you. I would rather go away and see how I can earn my own bread."
So the father gave him his blessing, and with great sorrow took leave of him. At this time, the king of a mighty empire was at war, and the youth took service with him and went with him out to fight. And when he came before the enemy, there was a battle, and great danger, and it rained shot, until his comrades fell on all sides. And when the leader also was killed, those left were about to take flight. But the youth stepped forth, spoke boldly to them, and cried,
"We will not let our fatherland be ruined."
Then the others followed him, and he pressed on and conquered the enemy. When the king heard that he owed the victory to him alone, he raised him above all the others, gave him great treasures, and made him the first in the kingdom. The king had a daughter who was very beautiful, which was also very strange. She had made a vow to take no one as her lord and husband who did not promise to let himself be buried alive with her if she died first.
"If he loves me with all his heart,"
said she,
"what good will life be to him afterwards?"
On her side, she would do the same, and if he died first, would go down to the grave with him.
Possibly.
This strange oath had up to this time frightened away all wooers, but the youth became so charmed with her beauty that he cared for nothing, but asked her father for her.
"But dost thou knowest what thou must promise?"
said the king.
"I must be buried with her."
He replied,
"If I outlive her, but my love is so great that I do not mind the danger."
Then the king consented, and the wedding was solemnized with great splendor. They lived now for a while happy and contented with each other, and then it befell that the young queen was attacked by severe illness, and no physician could save her. And as she lay there dead, the young king remembered what he had been obliged to promise, and was horrified at having to lie down alive in the grave. But there was no escape. The king had placed sentries at all the gates, and it was not possible to avoid his fate. When the day came when the corpse was to be buried, he was taken down into the royal vault with it, and then the door was shut and bolted. Near the coffin stood a table on which were 4 candles, 4 loaves of bread, and 4 bottles of wine. And when this provision came to an end, he would have to die of hunger. And now he sat there, full of pain and grief, ate every day only a little piece of bread, drank only a mouthful of wine, and nevertheless saw death daily drawing nearer. Whilst he thus gazed before him, he saw a snake creep out of the corner of the vault and approach the dead body. And as he thought it came to gnaw at it, he drew his sword and said,
"As long as I live, thou shalt not touch her,"
and cut the snake in 3 pieces. After a time, a second snake crept out of the hole, and when it saw the other lying dead and cut in pieces, it went back, but soon came again with 3 green leaves in its mouth. Then it took the 3 pieces of the snake, laid them together as they ought to go, and placed one of the leaves on each wound. Immediately, the severed parts joined themselves together. The snake moved and became alive again, and both of them hastened away together. The leaves were left lying on the ground, and a desire came into the mind of the unhappy man who had been watching all this, to know if the wondrous power of the leaves which had brought the snake to life again could not likewise be of service to a human being. So he picked up the leaves and laid one of them on the mouth of his dead wife, and the 2 others on her eyes. And hardly had he done this, then the blood stirred in her veins, rose into her pale face, and colored it again. Then she drew breath, opened her eyes, and said,
Oh, God! Where am I?
Thou art with me, my dear wife.
he answered, and told her how everything had happened and how he had brought her back to life. Then he gave her some wine and bread, and when she had regained her strength, he raised her up, and they went to the door and knocked, and called so loudly that the sentries heard it and told the king. The king came down himself and opened the door, and there he found both strong and well, and rejoiced with them that now all sorrow was over.
I know.
The young king, however, took the 3 snake leaves with him, gave them to a servant, and said,
Keep them for me carefully, and carry them constantly about thee. Who knows what trouble they may get thee service to us.
A change had, however, taken place in his wife. After she had been restored to life, it seemed as if all love for her husband had gone out of her heart. After some time, when he wanted to make a voyage over the sea to visit his old father, and they had gone on board a ship, she forgot the great love and fidelity which he had shown her, and which had been the means of rescuing her from death, and conceived a wicked inclination for the skipper. And once, when the young king lay there asleep, she called in the skipper and seized the sleeper by the head. And the skipper took him by the feet, and thus they threw him down into the sea. When the shameful deed was done, she said,
Now let us return home. Say he died on the way. I will extol and praise thee so to my father, that he will marry me to thee, and make thee the heir to thy crown.
Oh, but the faithful servant, who had seen all that they did, unseen by him, unseen by them, unfastened a little boat from the ship, got into it, sailed after his master, and let the traders go on their way. He fished up the dead body, and by the help of the 3 snake leaves which he carried about with him, and laid on the eyes and mouth, he fortunately brought the young king back to life. They both rowed with all their strength, day and night, and their little boat flew so swiftly that they reached the old king before the others did. He was astonished when he saw them come alone and asked what had happened to them. When he learnt the wickedness of his daughter, he said,
I cannot believe that she has behaved so ill. But the truth will soon come to light.
and bade both go into a secret chamber and keep themselves hidden from everyone. Soon afterwards, the great ship came sailing in, and the godless woman appeared before her father with a troubled countenance. He said,
Why dost thou come back alone? Where is thy husband?
Oh, my dear father,
she replied,
I come home again in great grief. During the voyage, my husband became suddenly ill and died. And if the good skipper had not given me his help, it would have gone ill with me. He was present at his death and could tell you all.
The king said,
I will make the dead come alive again.
and opened the chamber and bade the two come out.
What?
When the woman saw her husband, she was thunderstruck and fell on her knees and begged for mercy. The king said,
There is no mercy. He was ready to die with thee, and restored thee to life again. But thou hast murdered him in his sleep, and shall receivest what thou deservest.
Then she was placed with her accomplice in a ship which had been pierced with holes, and sent out to sea, where they soon sank amid the waves.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Once there was a miller who was poor, but who had a beautiful daughter. Now, it happened that he had to go and speak to the king in order to make himself appear more important to him. He said, I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold. The king said to the miller,
Well, that is an art that pleases me well. If your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow to my palace, and I will try what she can do.
And when the girl was brought to him, he took her into a room, which was quite full of straw, gave her a spinning wheel and a reel, and said,
Now set to work. And if by tomorrow morning early you have not spun this straw into gold during the night, you must die.
Thereupon he himself locked up the room and left her in it alone. So there sat the poor miller's daughter, and for the life of her could not tell what to do. She had no idea how straw could be spun into gold, and she grew more and more miserable, until at last she began to weep. But all at once the door opened, and in came a little man and said,
Good evening, Mistress Miller. Why are you crying so?
Alas, I have to spin straw into gold and I do not know how to do it.
What will you give me?
said the mannequin.
If I do it for you.
My necklace?
Said the girl. And the little creepy man took the necklace and seated himself in front of the wheel, and 3 turns and the wheel was full. And he put another on, and whir, 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 3 times around, and the second was full too. And it went on until the morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the reels were full of gold. By daybreak, the king was already there, and when he saw all the gold, he was astonished and delighted, but his heart became only more greedy. He had the miller's daughter taken into another room, full of straw, which was much larger, and commanded her to spin that also in one night, if she valued her life. The girl knew not how to help herself, and was crying, or whatever you call that. When the door again opened, the little man appeared and said,
What will you give me if I spin that straw into gold for you?
The ring on my finger?
answered the girl, and the even more creepier guy took the ring again, began to turn the wheel. By morning had spun all the straw into glittering gold. The king rejoiced beyond measure at the sight, but still had not gold enough. He had the miller's daughter taken into a still larger room, full of straw, and said,
You must spin this too in the course of this night.
You have to be kidding me.
But if you succeed, you can be my wife. Even if she be a miller's daughter,
thought he,
I could not find a richer wife in the whole world.
when the girl was alone, the mannequin came again for the 3rd time and said,
What will you give me if I spin the straw into gold for you this time also?
Oh, I have nothing left that I can give you.
answered the girl.
Then promise me, if you should become queen, your first child.
Who knows whether that will ever happen?
Thought the miller's daughter, and not knowing how else to help herself in the strait, she promised the mannequin what he wanted. And for that once more, he spun the straw into gold. And when the king came in the next morning and found all he had wished, he took her in marriage, and the pretty miller's daughter became a queen.
You're welcome.
A year after, she had a beautiful child, and never gave a thought to the mannequin. But suddenly, he came into her room and said,
Now give me what you promised.
The queen was horror-struck, and offered the mannequin all the riches in the kingdom if he would leave her the child.
No.
But the mannequin said,
No.
again,
Something that is living is dearer to me than all the treasures in the world.
Then the queen began to weep and cry and make a lot of other noises, so that the mannequin pitied her.
I will give you 3 days
day's time,
said he.
If by that time you find out my name, you can keep your child.
So the queen thought the whole night of all the names she had ever heard, and she went to the messenger over the country to inquire, far and wide, for any names there might be. And when the mannequin came the next day, she began with really weird names, like Snoop, Tupac, and Biggie, and said all the names she knew, one weird name after another, but to everyone, the little man said,
That is not my name.
On the second day, she had inquiries made up in the neighborhood as to all the names of the people there, and she repeated to the mannequin the most uncommon and curious.
Perhaps your name is Short Ribs? Or Sheepshacks? Or Lacewag?
But he always answered,
That is not my name.
Oh!
On the third day, the messenger came back again and said,
I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came to a high mountain at the end of the forest where the fox and the hare bid each other good night, there I saw a little house, and before the house the fire was burning. Round about the fire quite a ridiculous little man was jumping. He hopped upon one leg and shouted,
Today I bake, tomorrow brew, next I'll have the young queen's child. How glad am I that no one knew that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled.
Now, you may think to yourself how glad the queen was when she heard the creepy bald guy with the doll talk. And soon afterwards, the little man came in and asked,
Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?
Is your name Conrad?
No.
Is your name Harry?
No.
Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin?
The devil made you say that! The devil made you say that!
and the little man cried, and in his anger plunged his right foot so deep into the earth that his whole leg went in, and then in rage he pulled out his left leg so hard that he tore himself and his pants in two.